Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here today on this wonderful Friday afternoon, and it's a little bit of a slow day. I'm not even gonna lie. We're sort of just waiting on the Olympics to start. The opening ceremonies, I believe they're happening today as well. Some other sports, they already started competing in their qualifying rounds. Like, I believe soccer already started competing, rugby has already started to compete, but we're still waiting on basketball to start competing. They don't compete until much later. In fact, that's what I'm going to talk about, not even in this segment, actually. So the first segment is going to be about Stephen Curry and his comments on playing with Golden State going into the future. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that. Then in the second segment, Carmelo Anthony had some things to say about Jayson Tatum and why he's not the face of the NBA, according to, at least these are all, according to Melo and his opinion. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that in the second segment. Then in the third segment, I'll give an update on Team USA and when they're expected to play, who they're expected to play, and, just any more opinions that I have left to talk about for USA. And then there's also, in the fourth segment, we have the ESPN's top 25 list. Now, I'm going to go over some players that I think were snubbed from this list, as well as some players that were also snubbed from ESPN's top 100 athletes list, because they have two of them. They have two lists, one for NBA, one for all the athletes from what I know of, right? So that's going to be the fourth segment. We also have a special fifth segment that I like to reveal at the end of every fourth segment, so be sure to stay tuned for that. And before I begin, I would like to remind everybody to please go ahead and use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is GSMCpodcast.net. It really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is GSMCpodcast.net. And without further ado, let's go right ahead and go into the first segment, which is talking about Steph Curry and his sort of opinions on playing with the Golden State Warriors going into the future and just, things like that. I'm just going to go ahead and talk a little bit about that. And so Steph, obviously, this is going to be the first season where he doesn't have Klay Thompson on the roster at all. Actually, if we want to get technical, this is going to be the second season that Steph Curry doesn't have Klay Thompson on the roster, because Klay Thompson has gotten injured before and I believe it was in 2021. And I know in 2020, both Curry and Klay were injured, so not really much to derive from there. But in 2021, the Golden State Warriors, they did not have Klay Thompson, and I believe Steph Curry was having a really ridiculous year that year in 2021, but they were unable to do anything with their team. And then the year that they got Klay Thompson back, that was when everything took off again, and they ended up winning another championship. So one of the stipulating things about Steph Curry's career is the fact that he has yet to win a single playoff game without Klay Thompson, right? That's one of the things that, is sort of stinging Steph Curry and his legacy, because while his legacy is most likely already cemented, there are some things that he still has yet to answer, or some things that he has to prove. Like, for example, one of them being winning a playoff game without Klay, or even, advancing in a series without Klay. But, maybe given the state of his career, you might think he wouldn't be aiming to do something like that, but that's where you're wrong. Steph Curry, he really, he's still trying to compete, and still trying to compete at the highest level. And he recently spoke with Anscape's Mark J. Spears ahead of the 2024 Paris Olympics, touching on several topics, including his future with the Golden State Warriors. So, while obviously Curry, he's going to stay on the Warriors and he's going to be committed to be a Warrior, unlike his former teammate, he did make it clear that playing for a non-competitive bottom-feeding team, which is what he's afraid Golden State might become, would be something very difficult for him to endure. So the full quote is, I want via Anscape, I want to win. Let's put it this way. It's a long-winded way of saying that if it is a situation where you're a bottom feeder and it's just because you want to stay there, I'd have a hard time with that. And so he's really he really wants to continue winning championships, and instead of being loyal with the franchise that drafted him and gave him everything that he wants, he's willing to turn away from that and instead just try and compete for a title. And I could understand why, but at the same time I don't. Simply because, I feel like he's already done enough for his career. Playing at this high of a level, yes, it is very impressive, but I think now this is where the Warriors dynasty, this is where it ends, and I feel like Steph sort of has to accept that thing. They have to accept that they aren't the same players that they were before. But then again, I do understand the view of just, constantly trying to compete and constantly trying to win, because why wouldn't you want to try and do that? But I feel like this type of comment wouldn't have happened if they would have kept Klay. If the Warriors would have kept Klay Thompson on this lineup, if they would have tried to find a way to bring him here, or bring him back, I should say. I'm going to go ahead and quickly adjust the slide. And by adjust the slide, I mean, getting rid of there we go. That's a little bit better. But anyways, if Klay didn't leave, I think this comment would never have happened from Curry. Because I feel like Curry feels confident in playing with, the same players that he won championships with, Klay Thompson and Draymond. To them, it's they're the three musketeers, and they can't do anything without. I wouldn't say they can't do anything without the other, but it's most of their success comes from when they play with each other. Now, this stance is, it's consistent with Curry's comments throughout the offseason, and he emphasizes that he doesn't see any scenario unfolding like that. His remarks serve as a stark reminder to the Warriors management not to take Curry's loyalty to the franchise for granted. So according to the article, they think that this is sort of Steph Curry just testing the front office and being I might be loyal to you, but if there is a better situation down the road for me, I am willing to take it. And so, I'm having a really difficult time seeing Steph Curry wear any other jersey. I'm having a really difficult time with that. And it's thinking that he could be in a different scenario with a different team, thinking he could be on a completely different team is I genuinely have no idea what team it would be for if that were to happen, right? I'm just so fixated on Steph in a Warriors jersey. I didn't even picture Klay Thompson in a completely different jersey up until now. That's how it is. And if Steph Curry can't compete with Golden State, who can he compete for, right? I'm finding a really difficult time thinking of any sort of contending team that would be willing to pay him the money, as well as, if there would be any chance that the Warriors would trade him in the future. But, it's really, it's something to think about, and it's something that I really haven't given much thought in, because, I don't see Steph Curry leaving for a whole other franchise let alone for his team. And chances are the Warriors are going to actually, give him a lot of money. So if they keep stuffing his pockets, I'm not entirely sure he's going to have any more incentive to leave. If they keep giving him all the money that he would want in a contract, unlike Klay Thompson, where they didn't want to pay Klay, they might seem to be more willing to pay Steph Curry the money as opposed to giving it to Klay Thompson. And these comments, they caught me by surprise, because I wouldn't expect Steph Curry to be sort of this, I guess you could say, cold towards the Warriors franchise, because I feel like those comments would be a little bit cold, right? Like saying that you're a bottom feeder and it's just because you want to stay there. I'd have a hard time with that. I think that's a little bit odd for me. I would never have thought he would say that if Klay was on board. I never would have thought he would say that if... And honestly, the fact that Draymond's still on board with the squad and he still believes that he still doesn't want to play with the bottom-feeding team, I'm very surprised. It's surprisingly selfish for him, but it's really just I'm having a hard time just thinking about where he would go. I don't think that's going to happen. I think this is all just, a power move from Steph saying oh, you better watch out, this, that, and the other. But aside from that, nothing more. So with that, we are out of time for this first segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the second segment, where I talk about Carmelo Anthony and his comments about Jayson Tatum. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, I'm going to go ahead and talk about Carmelo Anthony and his opinions on Jayson Tatum. So, this comes off as a little bit of a surprise to me, because I didn't think Melo would have comments on Tatum and him not being the face of the league. But, aside from that, I'm going to go ahead with this segment. Before I begin, though, I'd like to remind everybody to please go ahead and use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is GSMCpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is GSMCpodcast.net. And without further ado, let us go right ahead and go into the second segment, which is going to be about Carmelo Anthony and his opinions on Jayson Tatum and, Tatum not being the face of the league. So, Melo, obviously, he is one of the league's best basketball players, one of the best scorers in recent NBA history. And I'm going to talk about him a little bit later in the fourth segment. Hint, hint. I'm sure if you know what the fourth segment is, you'll know exactly why I'm going to talk about him. But Jayson Tatum, he's coming off an NBA title winning season with the Celtics for the first time in his entire NBA career. Now, he didn't win the Finals MVP, but there are still people who think that he had the better performance, and there's still people who think that Jayson Tatum is the best player on his team. And naturally, if you win the title as the best player on your team, you're most likely going to be considered as, the face of the league, right? Like, you're going to have that title and that burden to sort of handle, right? When Jokic ended up winning, obviously, he won an MVP, but when Jokic ended up winning the NBA Finals like a year ago, everyone's sort of, there's this sort of stipulation that you're going to be the face of the NBA for at least a year or maybe more than that. Heck, even when Kawhi Leonard won an NBA championship with the Raptors in 2019, everyone thought that, Kawhi was going to just dominate the rest of the league for a couple more years and, maybe stay on Toronto. And people were considering Kawhi Leonard as the face of the league since, LeBron wasn't in the finals anymore. Steph Curry didn't win in the playoffs. And, Kevin Durant was also out of the playoffs. So it's like those guys that are usually garmented as the best players and the faces of the league, they weren't competing. So it was time for someone new to hold that title. But Jayson Tatum, for all his talents and for, despite winning an NBA title, it doesn't seem like many people are going to call him, the face of the league or the face of the NBA. In fact, I don't think Jayson Tatum is the face of the NBA, despite the fact that he won the championship with the Celtics and arguably had, one of the best seasons in the history of, basketball in terms of team success. Obviously, I mean, they got 60 wins. They were able to breeze through the postseason, basically, winning practically every single game of their series. They never went more than 5 games in a playoff series, so that means that they only took 3 losses in the entire postseason. 3 losses in the entire postseason is insane. That is. And they only lost 2 getting to the finals, so it's it really seemed like everything was just, falling into place for Boston. So why isn't Jayson Tatum the face of the league? Now, throughout his regular season, his conference games, and finals, Tatum's athleticism has attracted a lot of attention. But again, why are they not considering him the face of the league? And one of the biggest things, in my opinion, that probably, caused this was the fact that throughout Jayson Tatum's career and his time with the Celtics before winning this title, he was never able to really get an MVP. That is one of the things that Jayson Tatum lacks in his career now. Now he's got the championship. Now he needs to either get the Finals MVP or get the regular season MVP or maybe even both. Carmelo Anthony, I might as well get into his comments. He actually shared a perspective on Tatum's potential and his standing in the league. So, according to Carmelo Anthony, this is a quote, right? The reason why we put Anthony Edwards there is because of his aura. If JT had that aura, it's over. Now, that's what Carmelo Anthony said in his 7 p.m. in Brooklyn podcast. That's what he said. So he's thinking that, since, Anthony Edwards and Jayson Tatum, I wouldn't say they've had a similar career now, but throughout the beginning, I would say, before Tatum won his championship, I would say that they've had a similar career. They're both the faces of their team, and their team hasn't won in an extremely long time, or in Anthony Edwards' case, ever. And they both have, a similar play style. They both try to mimic Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant's game however they can and as best as they can. But we would still think that Anthony Edwards is better than Jayson Tatum. In fact, I genuinely feel that Anthony Edwards is better than Tatum, but I'm not entirely sure if it's aura. Now, for a lot of people, especially Celtics fans, it might be aura, but I don't really, because it's that mentality that you go into every game. Like, aura is a thing in basketball. Like, you gotta have that. Players who have that confidence and that ego, they always get a boost in the ranking, from the perspective of fans. So I'll give an example, right? Everyone still praises Michael Jordan to this day, right? And part of the reason that they praise Michael Jordan, I think, is because of, and this same thing could be applied with Kobe. It's because of their mentality going into a game and their mentality when they're in a game, right? Kobe, he wouldn't take any sort of crap from anyone, so he would trash talk them right back. He would also guaranteed, without a doubt, take the last shot, and they would vividly say it, they would personify themselves as the best players in the league. That is some sort of aura, similar to how Anthony Edwards already considers himself as the best player on Team USA, right? That is literally that is the definition of aura for basketball, and that is and when you think of Tatum, the what he gives off is just at least what a lot of people portray that he gives off is just a wannabe Kobe, right? He wants to have that killer instinct, but I can't really name many instances where he genuinely has that killer instinct. Yeah, and I'm sure he's had those instances. It's just you can't really identify them as much as you can identify with Anthony Edwards's, right? And that's sort of what I think the difference is between, Jayson Tatum and Anthony Edwards. Now, I feel like this is, kind of ironic coming from somebody like Carmelo Anthony, because when Melo was on the Nuggets and when Melo was on the Knicks, he didn't win a championship, but you could argue that his aura was much better than LeBron James's aura, right? And in terms of his score first mentality and the fact that he can score on anyone without moving an inch, right? But people would still consider LeBron James as the better player than Carmelo. So it's kind of ironic just how, the double standard is with some of these players around in the league, especially since, Melo hasn't even won a championship. So he's never really been the face of the NBA. I don't think he's ever been considered as the face of the NBA, but we're not going to slander Melo at all. Carmelo Anthony should be a Hall of Famer, one of the best Knicks players in recent history. It's really unfortunate how a lot of people, they aren't going to really remember Carmelo Anthony like that, especially since recently, there's been Jalen Brunson playing fantastic in New York and just taking all of the shine and all of the, well, not really taking all of the shine, but, just finally being the star that New York desperately wanted for the longest time. And yeah, it's really, and not only that, Nikola Jokic essentially winning a championship for the Denver Nuggets, erasing Carmelo Anthony's legacy on Denver. So yeah, it's just unfortunate for Melo. I hope he gets remembered, and I hope a lot of people remember who he was, but it doesn't look so good for him. So that's all that I have on the second segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the third segment, where I talk about Team USA. Once again, their quest for gold starts now, and I will basically go over their schedule right after this short break. So be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, I'm going to be talking about Team USA and, just the expectations and everything else about Team USA, any sort of opinions that I have lingering about Team USA, this, that, and the other. And I mean, look, this is supposed to be, well, a lot of people thought that these games, they were going to be a cakewalk for Team USA and their exhibition games, but it wasn't entirely a cakewalk. The projected average point differential between the United States and every other team that they went up against was 20, right? But it turned out that they ended up winning each game by an average of 10, which is obviously, when you consider it as 10 points less than what people previously anticipated it, that's not really looking that good. I'm not even going to lie. There were moments where I was afraid that Team USA was not going to be able to, deliver on the flawlessness, because one of the things that really stood out when talking about 2008's Olympic team and obviously 2012's Olympic team was the fact that these teams, they remained flawless throughout the entirety that they were formed, right? From start to finish, there has never been a single time where they lost a game, especially when Kobe Bryant was on the roster. They have never lost a game with Kobe Bryant on the roster, and they also have, they've never really been in that close of a game with Kobe on the roster. Obviously, there are some exceptions. There are some exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, they never come close to losing. So, but even though, even aside from the low expectation, well, the incredibly high expectations, it's not like the United States hasn't been dominating in these games. So, this is going to be their 5th consecutive gold medal if they end up winning in Paris. And they ended up landing in Paris, I should mention that myself. And they're also going to continue on with the rituals. LeBron's going to bear the flag, finally. And they've been placed in Group C. Now, I haven't really talked about their grouping. I talked about it just a little bit. They're going to play Serbia, South Sudan, and Puerto Rico. So they haven't played of all the teams that they in their group, Puerto Rico is the only one which they have not played against. They played against Serbia. They ended up blowing them out, surprisingly. And then they also played against South Sudan, and they only won by 1 point against the players on South Sudan. And the only reason why they won by that 1 point was because of LeBron winning the game in the end for Team USA. So they're going to kick off their first game on July 28th at 11:15 a.m. And this will be on Sunday. So, yeah, be sure to tune into that. And it's going to be... Unfortunately, I'm not going to be watching this game. I'm not going to watch it live. I will actually, wait, no, it's on Sunday. I probably will watch it live. Never mind. I had plans on Saturday, so I was not sure if I was going to be able to. I don't know why I read Saturday on that. That's my bad. So, hopefully, Kevin Durant is going to be just fine for this game. And, because that is the one question that a lot of people are having, just Kevin Durant's status and whether or not Kevin Durant is going to be able to play for Team USA and, actually play competently, considering how, implementing Kevin Durant and implementing someone as important as Kevin Durant into the roster is going to be something that I think is going to be a little difficult because, like, you know, you're used to playing all of these other players and their minutes. Now you have to squeeze in a small forward / power forward that's most likely going to take up a majority of the minutes because he's arguably the best player in USA's history. Like, in Team USA basketball's history, if Melo wins this gold medal, If KD wins this gold medal, I think he's going to be ranked higher on the Olympics list than Carmelo Anthony. And Carmelo Anthony, as an Olympian, is arguably one of the best players that the basketball world has ever seen. Like, he was phenomenal for Team USA. And as phenomenal as Carmelo Anthony was, Kevin Durant has always been phenomenal for Team USA. And again, you don't win 4 gold medals for nothing. Yes, he has 4 of them, which is ridiculous. But not to mention Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, he's also going to be pretty difficult to exchange minutes when you have Bam and Joel out there. Now, all 12 players, they are now obviously, you know, trying to bring their country to win their 17th overall gold medal. Steph Curry especially is looking forward to actually playing in the Olympics. This is, like, you know, the first time that he's playing in the Olympics and competing to win the gold medal. That isn't for FIBA, right? Like, this is his first Olympic showcase. So, Curry said, I'm looking forward to playing with some of the best players in the world, against some of the best players in the world, and also supporting other athletes around the country, around the world as well. Nevertheless, with the talent from the world's top basketball league now distributed across various national teams, right? Like Germany, they have NBA players. Serbia has an NBA player. And the French have a lot of NBA players. Canada also has NBA players. It's like the gold medals, like the window to win them, it's not really that easy. And the competition is really tough. Like, it's not an assured, like, it's not a guaranteed win, and it's not as guaranteed as people are making it out. I mean, I'm still personally terrified of the French national team. Victor Wembanyama just scares me, and the fact that he's paired with Rudy Gobert, and the fact that they don't have to worry about a 3 seconds is just terrifying. Like, that is very, very scary, thinking of a lineup where Victor and Rudy don't have to worry about 3 seconds. That's horrifying to think about. So, obviously, you know, Serbia, the match between Serbia is going to be on the 28th, if I've already mentioned that. And it'll obviously be played in the stadium that they have in Pierre Mauroy, in the stadium in Lille, I think it is. Forgive me if I've completely botched that name. I have no idea how you pronounce these cities, but, you know, one of the biggest problems that I think is going to affect Team USA is the fact that, you know, the French national team, not only do they have Victor and Rudy and a pretty good squad, they also have a very, very fruity home field advantage. Like, that home field advantage is beautiful. Like, they're playing directly in their home, and I'm like 90% sure that that everyone in France knows about Victor Wembanyama. Again, I'm 90% sure. Not entirely sure, but I'm very, very sure that everyone knows about Victor Wembanyama, and I'm very sure that a lot of French fans are going to pop out to watch these games, and partly because, you know, they want to see some of the United States athletes, but also because they want to see Victor and they want to cheer for Victor because, you know, he is from their home. So it's like, why wouldn't they cheer for the player at home? It sounds like it could be a really bad home field advantage. Now, let me see. I'm just going to go ahead and pull up the rest of the teams that are playing. So they play Serbia first. Then after going up against Serbia, they're going to play against South Sudan on the 31st. And then on the 3rd, they're going to play Puerto Rico. So a little bit of a gap between the 31st and the 3rd of August, you know, to be playing this. And all of these games, most of them, they're going to be on NBC because, NBC, I believe they always showcase the Olympics. Most of the time they always showcase the Olympics. And those are the only 3 games that the Olympic team, they get to play. Like, after those 3 games, they're going to be done with the group phases, and then they're going to move on to the knockout phases where they're going to compete against teams that have already made it past the group phases, right? Like, that's how the thing is going to go. And, having only those 3 games, it means that, like, you can't afford to have many mistakes. Like, that's going to be, they have to hope to God that the turnovers aren't going to be as bad as it is. And they also have to hope to God that, they're going to be all right. Like, this is a win or go home type of league. So it's like, you got to win all of these games to secure your spots. And that way, you'll be fine going into the group phases or going out of the group phases. So that's all that I had on this 3rd segment. So now I will go ahead and go into a short break and then go into the 4th segment where I go and look at ESPN's top 25 list again, as well as the top 100 list, and probably and talk about some of the snubs, in my opinion, because I do feel like there are a lot of snubs on that list. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about that list in the 4th segment, so I'll be right back. Be sure to stay tuned.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the 4th segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this 4th segment, I'm going to go ahead and go over ESPN's top 25 list again. And instead of, talking about who's on the list, because that was, really what I was talking about before, I'm going to talk about who didn't make the list, and I'm also going to go over the list a little bit again and maybe talking about my opinions on the list, because I didn't really get to say everything that I wanted to say, because it was a longer than average segment, and a lot of since it was longer than normal, I couldn't really elaborate on everything that, was supposed to be said, right? So it's just like, it's a little bit of, it was a bit of a last second thing, I guess you could say. Well, it wasn't really a last second thing, but this was sort of like, one of those instances where I was just like, I still have a lot more things to talk about, so I might as well go ahead and talk about this sort of thing again, because I want to get my actual opinions out there. So just a bit of a recap before we go into this this segment. There were ESPN, they made a list of the top 25 NBA athletes of the 21st century. So this is in the order that they listed them out as well. But these are the top athletes of the NBA. And so some of them made ESPN's top 100 list. Some of them didn't make ESPN's top 100 list. So LeBron, he's number 1. Then goes Kobe. Then Steph. Then Tim. Then Shaq. Then after Shaq is KG. Then Jokic. then Dwayne Wade, and Kevin Durant, Dirk Nowitzki, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Steve Nash, James Harden, Jason Kidd, Chris Paul, Kawhi, Manu Ginobili, Allen Iverson, Anthony Davis, Jesus Shuttlesworth or Ray Allen, Tony Parker, Draymond Green, Russell Westbrook, Pau Gasol, and Luka Doncic. So those are all of the players that were on ESPN's top 25 list. So of the 21st century. And, all of these players, they're really good, and you can make an argument for some of these players being on the list. But the same way that you can make an argument for these players being on the list and why they should be on the list, there's also arguments for, other players being on the list as well. And one of those other players that could be, making the list is, this is a little bit controversial, and I don't really think that he should be on this list. But actually, you know what? No, never mind. We're not even going to start with that player that should be on the list. One of these guys that I personally think should have made the list of the top 25 athletes in the 21st century is the one and only Knicks legend Carmelo Anthony, right? Now, Melo, again, while he doesn't have so many championships, right? One of the things that separated him from a lot of his peers was his Olympic career. Before Kevin Durant, he was arguably the best Olympian in the entire history of USA basketball. And we saw on ESPN's list that they really gave Manu Ginobili a lot of credit for his, participation on the Argentinian team, as well as, his championship runs with the Spurs. Obviously, the championship runs with the Spurs, they hold a lot more value. But, considering how Manu wasn't the best player on his team during those championship runs, I don't know how much more value it brings to the table as opposed to his Olympic career, considering how Tony Parker has the same amount of rings and has one more Finals MVP, but was actually ranked lower on the list than Carmelo Anthony. Well, not only Carmelo Anthony, but was ranked lower than Manu. Sure, Melo doesn't really have a title to his name. However, he did win the scoring title in 2012 and 2013, and he also has 28,289 career points, which is 10th most in the history of the league. And when you have a really competent scorer like that, I feel like having him off of this list is, you can make an argument for him being on this list and replacing, someone like the player that I mentioned previously, like Manu Ginobili, or even I wouldn't replace him for Tony Parker simply because Tony Parker has the Finals MVP, or even someone like Russell Westbrook, or even Pau Gasol. You can make the argument that Melo should have been on this list and not Pau, or you can make the argument that Melo should have been on it and not Russ, or someone else like that. Those are just examples, and those are just opinions and debates. You don't necessarily have to take them that seriously. Now, another player that was not on this list was Joel Embiid. A lot of people, now this is sort of a public opinion as opposed to a me opinion. He wasn't on this list. I don't think he should be on this list. Even though you could make the argument that, he is a much better scorer than Pau Gasol, and he is just, much more versatile, and he's going to be considered as one of the better players in this league. And unlike Pau, Joel Embiid is actually in the debates as being one of the best big men in the league, period. No question about it. And you could also make the argument that maybe he should be on this list over somebody like Allen Iverson, given how, Joel Embiid has the scoring that Iverson has, as well as the defense. But I just personally don't think that Joel Embiid should really be on this list. But at the same time, Jokic was already, a lot of people might think, okay, well, if you're going to have Jokic on the list, then you should also have Joel Embiid on the list, because Joel Embiid constantly outperforms when playing against Jokic every single time. And I do understand that, but again, I just don't agree with that, and those are just my opinions. I'm just, giving out the multiple perspectives as to why they have an argument for even being on this list. And I mean, he won an MVP in 2022, 2023, and is still only 30 years old. He won back-to-back scoring titles in 2021 and in from 2021 2022 to 2022 to 2023. And while he doesn't really have that much success in the postseason, his regular season prowess is really something to, it's not something to ignore, especially since, James Harden is on the list as well, and he's on relatively high, and he hasn't even won a championship. The only real thing that he has to his name is an MVP. And since Joel Embiid already has an MVP as well as a couple scoring titles, you could make the argument that he should be on the list as well. But if you are going to argue Joel Embiid being on this list, then you have to argue that Dwight Howard should probably be above him. Now, unlike the last few players that I mentioned, Dwight Howard actually has a finals appearance, and he also has an NBA championship that he won with the Lakers. And a lot of people really forget about that championship that he won because he wasn't the best player on the team, but he still was a pretty valuable player. Now, he also led the league in rebounding 5 times. He also led the league in blocks twice, and was named Defensive Player of the Year for 3 straight seasons. And since that hasn't been done in recent memory, I can't really name a defensive player that won 3 straight. That is a feat that's probably never going to be done again in the history of basketball. And because of that, I feel like this should be recognized. And oddly enough, Dwight was also snubbed from the top 100 athletes. He's not even on the list of ESPN's top 100 athletes of the 21st century, despite doing something so historic that no one has ever done since Dwight. This is really the last dominant center that the league has seen. Now, obviously, we might get accustomed to watching a center win the Defensive Player of the Year 3 years in a row in Victor Wembanyama. So we might see that happen again, but as of right now, Dwight Howard is one of those players that just, he got snubbed from the top 25 list as well as getting snubbed from the top 100 list. So just wanted to, point out some of those players. I'm going to go ahead and continue this 4th segment and move it to the 5th segment, right? So I'm just going to, that's what the 5th segment is. It's going to continue talking about some of the snubs on ESPN's list, both of the lists actually. And, I'll just go ahead and continue that right after this short break. So be sure to stay tuned. I'll be right back. And we are back with the 5th, and the final segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And wait, no, that's the wrong thing. I accidentally pressed that button. I apologize for that. But anyways, we are going to go right ahead and go into the final segment, which is going to continue on with the list of the ESPN snubs, because, and the player snubs that I feel like, they should have been on the list, but they weren't on the list. Obviously, we left off at Dwight Howard. We said that he was left off of the ESPN's top 25 athletes of the 21st century, as well as the top 100 athletes of the 21st century. Both of those lists are made by ESPN. And I should also take note that, or it should also be noted that Carmelo Anthony also wasn't on the top 100 athletes of the 21st century. But over someone like Dwight, I don't think Carmelo Anthony should, I don't think someone should get that award. Like, if it's over somebody like Dwight, or the next player that I'm going to mention, he shouldn't be able to be on the list. Because, if we really want to talk about who's an athlete, Dwight Howard was a crazy athlete. Obviously, he's not going to get that much attention now because of, and he's not really thought of as a dominant center because of what Shaq said and, what Kobe thinks of Dwight. But aside from that, or what Kobe thought of Dwight, I should say. But aside from that, I think he really is, so far, he's the best player on this list. And arguably, he's arguably better than Kyrie Irving. Now, this is one of the controversial players, especially, when you're talking about ESPN. And because he's how should I say this? This isn't the first time that Kyrie Irving has gotten snubbed from a list that he definitely should be on. If you want to talk about some of the top 25 athletes of the 21st century, I think Kyrie is supposed to be up there. People forget Kyrie was being talked about as, the only guard that was worse than him or was better than him in the league was Steph Curry and Russell Westbrook. Those were the only point guards that were better than Kyrie Irving at a point in time. And another list that he was also snubbed of, aside from the top 100 athletes and top 25 NBA players, he was also snubbed off of the NBA's top 75 team. And he was supposed to be on NBA's top 75 team, but he got removed because ESPN, a lot of the people didn't really like his approach and his stance during the coronavirus pandemic. I'm not going to talk about that, but essentially that was arguably, according to fans, that was allegedly one of the reasons why he wasn't on the top 75, because the NBA didn't really want to acknowledge him, especially after his alleged anti-Semitic quotes, or tweets, I should point out. Again, allegedly, that's what the media was saying when he posted all that stuff. And at the time that he posted that, this list was being made, and he had a whole highlight because when people get voted onto the top 75 team, they get a whole highlight reel of their career. He had a highlight. He had a highlight reel, but because he did what he did, they ultimately removed him from the top 75 and they replaced him with someone else. But that highlight reel was more than enough proof to have people think that he was supposed to be on that list. And I personally think that he should be on this list as well, because he should most definitely, I think he should be over Luka Doncic. There is an argument for him being over Russell Westbrook as well, in my opinion, but I'm not going to really get into that because we'll be here forever. But again, I really think he should be on this list. He was the first pick in 2011. He won an NBA title with Cleveland in 2016, being one of the only players in the history of basketball to come back from 3-1 in the NBA Finals. And he also recently helped the Dallas Mavericks make it to the finals again. And in 13 of his NBA seasons, he's made 8 All-Stars and 8 NBA, he made 8 All-Star teams, and he's made several first-team All-NBA appearances. And he's averaged 23 points, 5 assists throughout his, the majority of his career. Actually, no, scratch that. He made All-NBA second-team appearances, I should say. I apologize for that. And he's arguably, like I said before, there's been debate that he is, supposed to be the best point guard in the league, aside from someone like Russell Westbrook or Steph Curry. Like, at the time when he was on Cleveland, that was what he was doing. Now, another player that potentially, got snubbed was Damian Lillard. The only reason why I put Damian Lillard on this list is because he actually made NBA's top 75. And that's really the only reason that I have. Because aside from that, I don't think he should have made top 75. He doesn't have many awards to his name. His career on Portland is a little bit, it's a little bit meh, but a lot of people are only going to remember him because of, his deep three-pointer against the Oklahoma City Thunder, as well as the rest of his, playoff series that ended with him hitting a game-winning shot. Now, aside from 2019, though, he hasn't really done anything in the postseason. And he also ended up finishing top 8 in MVP voting 5 times, but that's about the only thing that he has going for him, again. Now, this other player on this list is also, he's a bit controversial because this is Paul Pierce. Again, like a lot of people, they're only going to remember Paul Pierce for his championship with the Celtics, as well as leaving on a wheelchair just because he wanted to use the bathroom. That is like the only thing that he's really known for. And he's also known as a vivid LeBron hater. But he ended up winning a championship in 2008, his only championship, and he also won a Finals MVP there. And he made the All-Star team 10 times in his career, and in an 11-season span from that as well. Like, he's by far been one of the best small forwards in the Eastern Conference for the longest time, in an era where LeBron was dominating the small forward, as well as, Carmelo Anthony. But aside from that, the fact that he was snubbed from this list as well as ESPN's top 100 athletes list is I'm very surprised by this. And on top of that, another player that I'm surprised that wasn't on ESPN's top 75 list is, well, not 75. Well, yeah, ESPN's top 75 team, as well as ESPN's top 25 prospects of the 21st century, is Klay Thompson. Now, as I said, he was snubbed from the ESPN's top 75 team. A lot of people don't agree with him being snubbed, and he actually made a joke saying that he was the 77th best player in the history of the NBA. And when you have a team and you have, a duo as iconic as the Splash Brothers, it's very difficult not to acknowledge both of those players and just how good they are at three-point shooting. Like, Klay Thompson I believe he's ranked second in most playoff three-pointers, and the only player that he's behind is Steph Curry. If he's not behind Steph Curry, then he's behind LeBron or something like that. But the only reason why LeBron is on that list is due to his longevity. Meanwhile, Klay Thompson is due because of his actual skill at three-point shooting. He's high up on this list despite playing way fewer playoff games than LeBron and way fewer playoff games than many other athletes that actually make this list. But again, he's just a freak three-point shooter, and the fact that he wasn't on this list but Draymond Green was on this list is a little bit concerning. But that might be because Draymond Green actually has awards to his name, while Klay Thompson doesn't really have that many awards, and the only real thing that he has are his 4 championships. But again, I feel like being a top 5 three-point shooter in the history of basketball should put you on this list, as well as put you on ESPN's top 75 list. But that's all the opinions that I have on Klay Thompson. His opinion has somewhat soured since his time with Golden State, mainly because, he went 0 for 10 in an elimination game, which is never good. But, aside from that, those are really the only snubs from both of the lists, both of the top 75 lists, as well as the top 100 athletes and the top 25. There are several players that didn't make either of those lists. And I could go on and on about other players that should have made this list as well. For example, T-Mac isn't even on the top 25 players of the 21st century list. Neither was, Vince Carter or any of those players like that. But again, I don't really feel with the other players that I mentioned, I don't think that their careers are enough to warrant them a spot on this list, and I don't think they have the resume to do that. But that's just me. But aside from that, that is all that I have for you on this final segment. Thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. As usual, please remember to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker. That is gsmcpodcast.net. It really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. That is all I have for you today on this final segment. I am your host, Nelson. Enjoy the weekend, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn ain't that